Back on the Golf Fix, I'm joined by Dr. Nick Molinaro, licensed psychologist specializing in sports psychology. Dr. Nick, always good to be with you. Thanks for stopping in here. Now, what is pressure and how does it affect us?
Pressure is the increasing of our conscious mind about our performance and actually the outcomes in competition or even a friendly game of golf.
So anytime we kind of get a little bit uncomfortable, we can feel that pressure, that anxiety kind of rise, and all of a sudden, potential disaster is right around the corner.
Well, what happens as you increase your conscious mind about the outcome, you actually decrease the use of your subconscious mind in your performance. And as you know, some of your best rounds have been played when you aren't even aware of what's going on.
Yeah, you make those putts, you're standing over that putt, you go, I just knew I was going to make it, and you just hit it into it. Now, we've got a chart up here that I certainly want you to explain to us. First of all, it looks like there's just a big hump to the average guy. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Well, on the left side, you can see that the vertical axis is performance, and that goes from low to high.
So we're going this way, performance, right?
And on the first side of the left side, there is the arousal, and that goes from 0 to 100, and anxiety from 0 to 100. And what you can notice here is that if you are outcome focused, the only time you can actually feel comfortable is when the event is over. So have you made the putt? Have you made the great swing?
Yep.
And if you're focused on that and you can't be in the moment, then that increases your anxiety level. So we always want a performer, a golfer, any athlete, to have high arousal. That is, their attention needs to be directed on the actual process that leads to the outcome. We don't want to become outcome focused.
So we want to make sure that we have this. Well, before I get to that, tell me about what this is, because this is an area that I know we want to be in, but I don't know why we want to be there. So what is that?
So the ZOF is the zone of optimal functioning, and you can see that high arousal and low anxiety produces the same degree of performance. So we want to keep you in that area, and that's my job as a sports psychologist, to keep athletes right at the top.
Okay, now we've got another chart that we want to take a peek at here, and this one is obviously a little bit more challenging to understand, but we see there's an arrow going here with skills, and then there's an arrow of challenge going from low to high. What are we looking at?
All right, so we can look at the skill set, whether it's a physical skill set or a mental skill set. Now, the physical skill set are the mechanics that your instructors teach, and the mental skill set or the things that I'm working with.
Yep.
So if the skills are actually low and the challenge is low, then we can see that a person would be apathetic. That's not typically the golfers that I work with. We can see that as the skill set increases and the challenge still remains low, then an athlete will become bored. They're not really interested. So most of the athletes that I'm working with are in the upper part of this.
Right. So would you say that in this, is this goal setting? Are we talking about goal setting here as we talk about that?
Goal setting is a very important part of performance, that if you don't have an outcome goal, if you don't have a goal that you're really striving towards, why would you actually be playing the game?
Right, so that would create either apathy or boredom.
That's
are we
correct.
kind of talking about? Okay. And as we start to go up in this,
as the challenges start to increase, that's going to influence our performance based upon whether or not we have the skills or we don't have the skills. If we don't have the skills, you're going to become anxious. And if you do have the skills, your performance is going to raise. So when we look at the mental performance, if the individual is now not able to manage their emotions effectively, increase their consciousness when it's necessary, decrease that, and have the attention in the right place, if that skill set is not developed, that will produce anxiety. Now, when a person becomes anxious, as we've heard in my last meeting with you, that the left side of the brain starts to become charged up and there's actually an increase in heat. And that influences the performance of antagonistic and protagonistic muscles, and you cannot have a nice fluid swing when that's taking place. We don't want anxiety.
Right.
We want to be able to increase the function by raising the individual's skill set. And that's what we do in managing emotion states and setting appropriate goals. And as we do that, then we can actually see that the individual winds up in a flow state.
So we raise our skill set and we raise the challenges that we have, and then all of a sudden we end up in that flow. We get comfortable out there. We get into that zone area that people are talking about.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, you know, this is going to vary depending upon the golfer. So for a high handicap golfer, just getting the ball out of the sand will be the challenge. And then for a low handicap golfer, we're talking maybe about 2 shots per round, when I work with pros, I'm really looking at 2 to 4 shots around maximally.
Beautiful. Doc, always good to be with you. We're going to see you next week, too. We look forward to that. We are going to get as much as we can out of Dr. Nick. We're going to teach you, by the way, when we return, how to manage your expectations on the golf course. Don't go anywhere. Well done, Doc. Back on the Golf Fix, talking about playing under pressure. It is Playing Under Pressure Month, and I've brought in my good friend, Dr. Nick Molinaro, to help us. You saw him last week talking to us about pressure and playing under pressure, what it's all about. Well, this week we're going to discuss how you can be successful on there. And Doc, what is the mindset that most people are dealing with when they get under pressure?
Well, a lot of times a player will just go out there and be more concerned about the outcome instead of being focused on the moment. We talked a little bit about this in the past. Your intention drives your attention, and I always counsel people to go out and get the job done, and if not, look at what they've learned, not what they failed at. So we have to have a mindset that gives us the opportunity to learn from every one of our experiences.
That not necessarily pressure being something that's going to produce a negative outcome, but it can also produce a positive outcome. Certainly that was something Jack Nicklaus talked about. Now you've got a step-by-step guide for us here. We're going to pull up the Breeds board and get right to this 4-step process on how we can be Jack Nicklaus-like when we're playing under pressure. What are we looking at?
Well, first of all, we're going to be talking about broad external attention. Now, this is Dr. Nidafer's model. And so what we found is that your attention is either outside of you or inside of you, and it can't be in 2 places at once. So first of all, we need to be able to look at the hole, look at the fairway, get the whole global perspective on it. And that's what we're going to do in broad external attention.
So when we're talking about broad external attention, we're talking about having a very broad look at this and the external stuff, not necessarily what we have to do to be successful at it, but what is the hole, what's the shot, what are the conditions, how's the lie, all that stuff that's going in. A very broad sort of assessment of the situation we're in. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Step 2,
now
broad internal.
We move our attention now inside of ourselves, and we start to consider what our options are. And here we can decide whether it's going to be a knockdown shot, a stinger, what are we going to do coming out of the bunkers.
So we may decide, okay, this shot here is asking for a left to right shot or a right to left shot, maybe high, low, something like that, and then trying to figure out, okay, now this is what the shot's calling for. So we've got a very broad internal attention. What do we have to do to get that ball to do what we want it to do?
That's correct.
Okay, step 3.
Now, after we've made those considerations, we have to bring our attention still inside of us and narrow it down to the very specific shot that we're going to make and what are the qualities of our mechanics, both physically and mentally. And that's what we're doing now with narrow internal attention.
So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're going to hit a knockdown shot as you referred to. Now, what are the things that we have to do to hit a knockdown shot? Maybe get a little bit closer, and we're just rehearsing that stuff in our mind, making sure that we maybe get a little bit upright in our swing or whatever the things are that we need to do to pull off the shot. And pre-shot routine, that's going to be a big part of what we're doing in our narrow internal attention.
That's correct. Once that's set, then we're ready for the final step.
Final step is narrow external.
Now, in the narrow external attention, we focus specifically on the process and the outcome that we're going to be using in order to get the ball to where we want it to get it.
It seems like it's an extremely organized way of dealing with a circumstance when we get a little bit under pressure. And my guess is that when people get under pressure, their minds tend to move very, very fast, and they kind of skip a bunch of things.
Or they get stuck. And in our next slide, you'll see what is the #1 factor that produces problems with performance under pressure. And as you can see, that the model allows us to go from external to internal. We may need to do that more than one time. But we cannot go from immediately looking at the ball and hitting it. We have to bring our attention inside.
So we have to follow the steps. So this upper left-hand corner is our broad external. That's step 1. Step 2 is broad internal. Down here, narrow internal, and then narrow external. And it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can't, what you're saying is you can't kind of go, hey, I got to number 2. Okay, let's just jump to number 4, because why wouldn't we do that, right? You got to follow the path.
Now, most players that are having problems get stuck right here, and they are continuously going over things and they're not ready to hit the ball. So they're not set, they haven't made up their mind. It may appear that they have, But a lot of times a player will try to go from here to here, and that's where the biggest difficulty is in this model.
Because once you start in this, you have to follow the steps to get to next narrow and external attention. And that's the ideal place that we want to get to, right? That's the place where we're going to perform best.
Right. In here is where anxiety and worry takes place.
Yep.
And you can see that after a putt is made, and sometimes even before the ball stops rolling, the player goes up and hits the ball.
Yep.
He hasn't moved to a narrow internal attention to finally execute. He tries to go from here to here, and that's what produces most of the problems.
And so maybe we might suggest for people that when they go out on the golf course to practice these steps, go through step one, what is the broad external, and then kind of go all the way along and build that basic for foundation to trust in what might not be a trusting situation when you're under pressure.
Exactly, and that's why pre-shot routine is so important, which we'll talk about shortly, and that's how we get through our pre-shot routine.
Well, Doc, I know we're going to get to that pre-shot routine stuff next week. That's going to be how shortly we're going to get to that, but we appreciate all your assist with us, and we look forward, by the way, to you joining us next week.
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome back to The Fix. It is Playing Under Pressure Month, and I'm joined again by Dr. Nick Molinaro. Dr. Nick, we're finally going to get to hit a golf ball here. Let's first talk about imagination and what it can be, both positive and negative.
If you imagine the outcome is negative, obviously it's going to influence your performance. We use imagery effectively with 3 different styles. One is external imagery. It's as if a video camera were watching you in your performance. Internal imagery is what you actually see behind your own eyes. We'll use that for very specific shots. And then what people describe as feel, we call proprioception, and that's the felt experience without actually moving your body.
So what you're saying is that one of them is almost like you're sitting in a movie theater watching yourself hitting a shot, whatever it is, putt,
perfect,
full swing,
Michael,
whatever, right?
Absolutely.
And then one of them is what you are visually seeing out of your eyes, how the club is moving, how it might come into the golf ball. Maybe I'm even seeing the shaft of the golf club or whatever that is, right?
That's correct.
And then the last one is the feel.
Yes.
What I'm physically feeling as I start to do this, whether it's feel like taking it outside. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. How do you know how far to take the club back to actually make the putt?
Right.
You imagine that before you actually take the putter back. We use that in pre-shot routine.
Okay, so pre-shot routine. How important is pre-shot routine in being successful under pressure?
Pre-shot routine is essential. It is the most effective way to get yourself ready to determine if you're able to hit the ball the way you want to. So there's a very specific technique that I use with all my golfers to train them, then we personalize it for each player.
All right, well, let's make all of them, all of your golfers. I'm going to be the guinea pig. Walk me through my pre-shot routine. Here I am standing. What am I doing first?
First of all, I want you to breathe as you've done, and breathe, relax, imagine, BRI. And as you do that, I want your whole body to relax. Now, I add about 3 seconds.
So I'm breathing. That's the B. I'm relaxing.
Right.
That's the R, and then the I is imagining. What am I going to do with the shot? Is that what you're saying about imagine? I'm going to hit it left to right or right to left, or is it imagine what I'm going to do with the swing, or maybe both?
Well, that's a really good question. We're going to use different forms of imagery for different shots.
Okay.
So in the full swing, we want the external image as if the video camera were watching. Michael will make the perfect swing. When we use chipping, we want internal imagery because we want to now imagine the club face coming into the ball at the appropriate angle. And in putting, we want to be able to use the feel about how far back the club's going to come, and you match those in your practice strokes.
So we're going to vary that depending on the shot that we're hitting.
Depending upon the shot.
All right, so right now, Doc, I've got a 6-iron here, so I'm going to be going to the movies. I'm going to be watching my
That's correct.
my shot. So what I'm doing is I'm breathing, and obviously there's an art to breathing, right? We want to make sure that
diaphragmatic
get
breathing.
it into the diaphragm. I don't use diaphragmatic. I can't spell that. So I go into the diaphragm here, and then I'm relaxing. That's the R, and then I'm imagining what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get in here. Okay, so I've got that.
Michael, stop. All I want you to do is add another second or two to make sure your body is regulated. I like to add about 3 seconds to each pre-shot routine. Make sure your body is really regulated. Now move into the ball slowly.
Okay, so I've got about 40 seconds left here, Doc. So I'm slowly in here. I'm relaxed, and I've imagined. Now?
See yourself make that swing and then pull the trigger.
So I imagine in my mind that I'm hitting that shot. So I visualize the movement, and now I'm going to execute. Well, this is pretty good execution. I hit it farther than I wanted to. I didn't imagine the outcome of the distance. I only imagined the shot direction. Doc, fantastic work. Always appreciate you coming in here and appreciate your knowledge and your enthusiasm for the game of golf. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, I'm going to show you a trick shot that I know is going to impress your friends. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The Fix.